Hi you guys, we are back with my Crypto 101 series, and today we'll be going over NFTs, also known as non-fungible tokens. Now, non-fungible tokens are a big part of crypto. The hype has definitely died down since they were created, but I will say the hype is still there. Just a little bit toned down, but it's definitely still there. And I'm going to explain to you exactly why it's there. I'm going to explain to you exactly what an NFT even is, and then exactly why it even matters. So with all that said, before we get into it, welcome back to Getting Digital with Deja. So let's first go over the textbook definition. Non-fungible token, a unique digital certificate that proves ownership of a specific item on a blockchain. Unlike regular crypto coins, which are identical and can be swapped on a 1-to-1 ratio, every NFT has a distinct digital signature and cannot be replaced by another identical token. NFTs can also be traded for other crypto, other NFTs, or for cash. And you may be thinking this sounds a lot like a regular cryptocurrency coin. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not exactly what it is. Now, the difference between cryptocurrencies and NFTs is that cryptocurrencies are fungible. That means that one Bitcoin from the next is not really different. There's no significant difference from this Bitcoin coin to this Bitcoin coin. Now, when it comes to NFTs, they are not identical at all. There's no similarities. One NFT is that NFT. It represents whatever it represents. There is no similarity in NFTs. Even if it's the same product and things like that, they have their own digital signatures. They have their own identities. So that's why they're considered non-fungible, because it cannot be traded on a 1-to-1 ratio. One NFT cannot be traded with another NFT, okay? Because the value is not going to be the same. So in my opinion, I would say an NFT is more similar to an RWA, a real world asset, than it is a cryptocurrency. And the reason why I say that is because these NFTs can be photography, it can be gaming, it can be art, it can be music, it can be anything, a real world asset, a real world product, and you're tokenizing it. Okay, so you're tokenizing it and placing it into a digital form of ownership. And that's when it becomes an NFT, because nothing is going to be the same as this NFT. There's nothing that's going to be identical. And the way that these NFTs are created is that they are minted. Okay, so when I say they are minted, just like money's being minted, they print out money and things like that. Now with NFTs, everything is digital. There's no printing. Now I do want to say you could have 10,000 NFTs being minted like around the same time, and they are still going to have their own unique value, their own unique identifier, and their own unique digital signatures that's going into that NFT. So we have to remember that it's a form of ownership, and there's only going to be one owner to this NFT. Now it can be traded and things like that, but when it gets minted, it's going to be assigned to a blockchain address and to an owner. So when it comes to cryptocurrency, you have to remember that there is no middleman and there's no banks involved, okay, for the traditional decentralized type of cryptocurrency. Now, that does not change for NFTs as well. There is no type of third parties. There's no government intervention or third parties coming in to mess up the ownership process of these NFTs. So when I say that, I mean, for example, Tory Lanez dropped an album called Playboy. Okay, this was like everywhere, all over the news. He dropped an album called Playboy, and on that album, he sold it as an NFT, and it sold out within 2 minutes of it dropping. There was no middleman, there was no fees taken out for his profit, and he had full ownership of the profit that was made from that album sale. All right, so there was nobody, no music platforms taking out their cut from Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, none of that. Literally, he kept all the money, and it was such a big thing because people were like, how was he able to do that? He just used his brain, his knowledge about these digital assets and these digital finance to be able to find a loophole to be able to have all of his coins. And when I say his coins, I mean physical money. So this brings me to the next topic of today, which is going to be the benefits and the cons of NFTs. Now, the number one benefit, as we can all see, is that you can basically have ownership of something. So NFT, you skip the middleman, you skip the fees, you skip all the things, and then people could run a business off of these NFTs and keep all of the revenue and all the profit for themselves. And also, it can streamline the process of selling to your customers. So it's going directly from you to your customers. There's nobody in the middle. So it's more of a personalized experience as well, not having to deal with any platforms or outside services. That is the number one benefit of an NFT, allowing sellers to connect directly with their target audience. Now let's get into the cons or the concerns of an NFT. So while you can target the audience that you want and it's a direct streamline from seller to customer, you have to remember that these NFTs are extremely specific, whether it's a specific song, a specific game, a specific piece of art, a specific picture, all of that, okay? It's very specific. So that means even though you have a target audience, your audience as a whole is going to be smaller than the mass market, because some people are just not going to be interested in what this NFT is bringing to the table, to be completely honest. And now that means when you have an NFT and you don't want it anymore, it's going to be hard to get off your hands. When I say that, it's going to be hard to trade it or to sell it, because you have to find a target person or a target audience that is going to want that NFT, whatever that NFT may be. You have to remember that it is basically a digitalized type of asset or a digitalized type of product. Now, also, when you're trying to trade it, this NFT, you have to make sure that it's still popular. All right, there's so many stories of people buying NFTs for like $1 million and then it not being popular 2 years later and they're selling it for like $5. I'm not exaggerating. I'm being so completely honest with this. So that is the danger in having these NFTs. You got to make sure that you really want that thing, all right, and that you're going to keep it for the long run and just wish for the best, honestly. Another downside to these NFTs is that basically the ownership is represented by hash metadata, by key pairs, okay? So what that means in a sense, people can be able to copy whatever you produce, like your music. It can copy like your art and things like that, and it can be circulating around without your knowledge or without your consent, and there's really nothing that you can do about it. There's no copyrights, all right? So it's really hard to be able to keep track of what's going on with your NFT, because in a sense, using different technologies and techniques with today's AI, you can definitely copy a form of NFT, whether that be music or art or whatever it may be, and have it circulating without the owner's permission. So now that we got through the cons of NFTs, we are going to go over the blockchains and the techniques and practicality behind these NFTs. Now, NFTs are not offered on all blockchains. They are not, you guys. And actually, they are mostly offered on Ethereum and Solana type of blockchains through these platforms called OpenSea and Eden. And I will go over that right now. So OpenSea and Magic Eden, they basically operate as like the eBay or the Amazon for digital assets, okay? So for blockchains and things of that such. Now, what I mean by that is they offer a lot of different products on their platform for you to choose from, just like Amazon has medicine, candy, groceries, pets, houses, everything you think you can think of on Amazon or eBay. That's exactly how Magic Eden and OpenSea are for these NFTs and for just digital assets in general. They are the marketplace for digital assets. Now, they are hosted on both Ethereum and Solana. Now, even though Solana and Ethereum both offer these NFTs, I have to say that Ethereum is going to be the almost better and most popular option because it has the most sales of NFTs on their platform. So that blockchain is home to the most sales of NFTs out of all of the other blockchains. Now, then you have Solana. Solana is really good for these NFTs marketplaces as well because the speed of the transactions and the speed of gaining ownership of these NFTs. So because it's so fast and the fees are so low, it's going to gain a lot of attention from people who are trading, tokens for a gaming system or something like that, or just people trading everyday digital items. So it's going to be faster, quicker, and cheaper on the Solana platform. But at the end of the day, more people do depend on Ethereum to be able to have these NFTs being bought and sold. Another platform where these NFTs are going to be offered is going to be known as Polygon, which is directly tied to Ethereum. So that is for big budget traders. All right. So if you got a lot more money, with these NFTs and things like that, that will be your market, your platform that you would want to be on. But the most popular one is still going to be Ethereum because it was the first one to start all of this stuff, the dApps, the the smart contracts and all that. Ethereum is the home of that. So then everything that follows behind it is just following the blueprint and the footprints of the original, which is going to be Ethereum. Now, The reason why these NFTs are not offered on basically all blockchains or a lot more blockchains is essentially because of liquidity. All right, so when you have smaller blockchains, you have a smaller audience and you have a fraction of the crypto market in general. And these NFTs are very, very specific. So the liquidity for what you're trying to sell within that NFT might be little to none, depending on what type of blockchain you are using. So another reason why NFTs are very specific in the blockchains that they are offered on is the fact of custody and direct ownership. Now, when I say that, we have to remember that centralized exchanges, they have those users' funds in centralized places, okay? So it's not necessarily a total decentralized type of environment when you are putting your money and you're trading into these centralized exchanges. Now, NFTs are completely supposed to be decentralized. One person has full ownership of it, the keys of it, and things of that such. But so they are essentially kept on a Web3 type of wallet. Now, when you're having these exchanges, these centralized exchanges trying to store and house these NFTs that are supposed to be inside of a Web3 type of wallet, it's not a seamless type of interaction there. So they're having a lot of friction and a lot of problems to be able to properly be able to do that efficiently and just like in a smart way, that it becomes a lot harder and almost not worth the squeeze, which makes it really hard for central order books to be able to merge seamlessly with those decentralized wallet data. Now, the next reason I'm going to be going over for why it's not offered on a lot of blockchains is the incompatibility of those smart contracts. Now, because this is very technical, I'm going to read it straight from my notes so we can have a very accurate description of this. So it says, incompatible smart contract standards. Ethereum popularized the ERC-721 and ERC-1155 token standards, which act as a universal blueprint for digital items. Many alternative blockchains use unique code foundations that require marketplaces to completely rebuild their infrastructure from scratch just to list the item. ERC-721 dictates the ownership and the transfer of how transactions are confirmed. Secure official technical standard NFTs. ERC-1155 standard lets multiple NFTs share a single contract, reducing the transaction costs. So as you can see, Ethereum is basically dominating the space of NFTs. They have their own standards that it goes by that's basically universally adopted and universally accepted. So when you have these blockchains, they are not compatible with these type of smart contracts. So they cannot even list these items on their blockchain without completely having to do it all over again. So Ethereum holding these standards of how these NFTs are going to operate essentially is why they are the biggest NFTs that's out there, the biggest platform that offers NFTs out there, alongside of Solana and Polygon and a few other places as well. Thank you guys for listening to my video about NFTs. I know it was a little bit boring, but I'm going over all things crypto, so we're about to learn the nitty-gritty of everything about crypto, okay, like we've been doing. But I will say I will be back with another video on a topic that I'm going to surprise you guys with, so stay tuned to see that one. And I just always want to remind you guys that pretty girls can do crypto too. Toodles.